to the 2021 Disability in North Carolina Fall Conference, Unlocking Your Inclusivity. We are thrilled to have you here. You are in store. We have an amazing program in store for you. Great speakers, great panels. We will have the opportunity for live Q&A as well throughout today's event. Just as a reminder, if you will use the WebEx feature down at the lower right-hand corner of your screen, there's a Q&A section. If you'll put your questions in that section, we have someone monitoring those. And that allows us to reserve the chat feature of this platform for just engaging, which we are so craving right now. That one-on-one conference attendee engagement where you guys can have open conversation, and we encourage you to do that. That's a key piece of this event often is the networking and the listening and learning that we do from one another. So please feel free to use that chat box for that purpose. Again, my name is Beth Butler, and on behalf of our board of directors at Disability in North Carolina, I want to thank you for joining us today. And just again, want to encourage you to engage with us through this event. National Disability Employment Awareness Month is here, and this is a part of your journey to enhancing your company and your organization's disability inclusion strategies. So again, welcome. And a huge thank you to Trane Technologies, our host sponsor for today's event. And now I would love to welcome Evan Tertz, who is a Senior Vice President and General Counsel for Trane Technologies, to join us. Good morning, Evan.
Hi, Beth. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to kick this off, and it's going to be an awesome day. I just looked again at the conference agenda, and it's just so action-packed. I'm really happy to be able to kick this off. So let me officially welcome you to the Disability in North Carolina's 2021 Fall Conference. This year's theme is really exciting. It's called Unlocking Your Inclusivity. Unlocking Your Inclusivity. And Trane, obviously, Trane Technologies is proud to host this year's conference and values our continued partnership with Disability in North Carolina. Today, the thing that's really exciting, I think, is going to be you're going to be hearing from business leaders of diverse industries and backgrounds, sharing key strategies on topics to enhance your company's disability inclusion efforts. And at Trane Technologies, we recognize the importance of creating a culture that's inclusive of everyone, and including persons with disabilities. And I've had the great fortune of being the sponsor for our ERG visibility. And it's been a great road. It's a journey that we're on. It's a journey that, in many ways we're leading, and in many ways we're very much beginning. And we learn a lot from these conferences and from all of you and from all of the other industry leaders. So I'm looking forward personally, and I know our team is to hearing some of the great ideas and the great things that people are doing. But we're really, really happy to be a part of this community and to be here and to be the hosts. So without further ado, I have the honor of introducing Chauncey Barnhill. Chauncey Barnhill is the Senior Vice President and Operations Area Manager with Wells Fargo. He's also the Chairman of DINC's Board of Directors. And Chauncey has the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker. So without further ado, Chauncey, let me turn it over to you.
Good morning, and thank you so very much for that introduction, Evan. And I have the pleasure, as Evan mentioned, of introducing Laurie Henneborn. Laurie is a managing director at Accenture, a leading global professional services firm. Based in New York, Laurie leads global research and thought leadership development in the Accenture Research organization that is focused on raising awareness and taking action pertaining to disability inclusion and equality. To that end, she leads the research for the Enabling Change study you'll hear about in this session. And she sits on the board of directors for the American Association of People with Disabilities, so AAPD, and on the Global Disability Inclusion Advisory Council at Accenture. Finally, she She is especially passionate about coaching and mentoring colleagues with invisible or non-apparent disabilities, drawing from her own experience since being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2004. Again, Laurie, welcome. And with that, we'll go to a short video and then we'll have some Q&A after the video. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much to Beth Butler and the Disability in North Carolina team for hosting this event. And hello, everyone from New York. My name is Laurie Henneborn. I'm thrilled to be reconnecting with our friends in North Carolina after presenting at a similar event in the fall of 2019. I'm a white woman with dark blonde hair, hazel eyes. I'm wearing a black shirt and glasses with my home office background. I am a managing director at Accenture. We're a leading global professional services firm with nearly 600,000 employees around the globe. And I lead research and thought leadership development focused on raising awareness and taking actions pertaining to disability inclusion and equality in the workplace. And to that end, I led the research for the study you're going to be hearing about in this session, but also for the 2018 Getting to Equal Disability Inclusion Advantage study, which was a collaborative effort between Accenture, Disability In, and the American Association of People with Disabilities, AAPD. I'm on the board of directors for the AAPD, and I sit on the Disability Inclusion Advisory Council at Accenture. I'm also on the DEI committee for Disability In. Finally, I am especially passionate about coaching and mentoring colleagues with invisible disabilities, particularly drawing from my own experience since being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2004. Next slide. So as you can see here, Accenture, we have been on this journey with our Getting to Equal research and thought leadership program, which traditionally has focused on the critical gender equality issue. But last year, we had this unique opportunity an exciting opportunity to incorporate several what I call dimensions of diversity. And this was made possible due to a truly multifaceted survey of 30,000 employees from almost 30 countries. We conducted this survey in 2019. From that core survey, we have been able to release the Getting to Equal report earlier in 2020. And then with results from 6,000 employees and nearly 700 executives with disabilities, we have this study focused on the role of culture for disability inclusion titled Enabling Change, which we launched in time for International Day of Persons with Disabilities in December of 2020. And ultimately, all of this powerful content aims to confirm our Accenture's passion and position on inclusion and diversity in its broadest sense, while delivering an understanding of tangible actions that our clients can take to advance along their own journeys. Next slide. So just a general, run through of what we'll be covering. I'll give a brief overview, right? The high level summary of findings, then we'll dig into the details. And then finally, I'll provide a link to the study, as well as obviously we'll open up to Q&A. Next slide. So yeah, let's dig into the overarching storyline, as it were, right? That emerged from this incredible study. So persons with disabilities represent about 15%. That's roughly 1 billion of the world's population. But their participation in the workforce is disproportionately low. It's estimated that across the world, close to 80% of persons with disabilities are not employed. In most developed countries, the official unemployment rate for persons with disabilities of working age is at least twice that of those who have no disability. But what about those of us who are in the workforce? Are we, as a community, confident in our roles and in our contributions, right? Those contributions that we're making? Are we feeling supported? Are we thriving? And is the culture of the organization in which we work enabling a more diverse, inclusive workforce overall. Well, Accenture's research suggests that, in fact, organizations are at risk of seeing wasted talent among this community of aspirational workers who do love our jobs, right? We love working, but are more likely by 1.5 times, or just over 60% more likely to feel excluded in the workforce and lack a sense of achievement, a sense of confidence in terms of the contributions that we're making. All such important criteria for an individual to be and to feel engaged. And yes, change is needed. But our research revealed that achieving real, meaningful change is hampered by two things. First is the lack of transparency and trust, where we have strong evidence that a vast majority of employees and leaders alike, 77 and 81% respectively, are not disclosing the disabilities at work. And second, which is not highlighted here, but is discussed in the report, is this lack of urgency to change, which is likely driven by the gap that you'll see in how supportive the leaders believe their culture is versus what the employees actually experience. In fact, it's a mere 20% of the employees with disabilities that we surveyed who feel the organization is fully committed to supporting them. What we conclude is that culture is the key that will unlock the door to a thriving disability workforce and to growth for the organizations that get this right. In fact, we found that a 50% boost to engagement is possible if the culture is as equal and inclusive as the top 10% in our sample. And so what's the correlation of all of this to the financial outcomes for the companies who get it right? Well, we were able to unearth this by focusing on organizations that identified and actively focused on helping employees with disabilities to thrive. The result is that these organizations, and it was roughly 250 of them, I think it was 253 to be exact, so about 15% of all for-profit companies represented in our sample are growing sales and profits faster than their peers by nearly 3 times and 4 times respectively. Our thought leadership then concludes with the 8 actions that executives can take today to raise the engagement of their employees with disabilities. Next slide. This is the fun part. Let's dig into the findings. Next slide. So it's always important, right? With research like this, events like this, it's important to ground ourselves in the scale of disability and how employment is trending around the world, that this is not a niche issue. Persons with disabilities represent about 15%, that's 1 billion of the world's population, as I stated. But it's important not to forget 80% of disabilities emerge when people are of working age, like me, right? I was with Accenture, I think at that point, 5 years. It was 2 years after my son was born, and boom, optic neuritis, multiple sclerosis. And it continues, right, to be a part of me, of my life. It means any of us could acquire a disability at any time. This is not a matter of them, but a matter of all of us. Again, not a niche issue. And participation in the workforce, disproportionately low. It's estimated that across the world, close to 80% of persons with disabilities are not employed. And in most developed countries, the official unemployment rate for persons with disabilities of working age, again, is at least twice that of those who have no disability. Next slide. And COVID-19 has exacerbated this employment gap. While the pandemic has shown us that remote working and reasonable accommodations at scale are possible, that hasn't been the case for persons with disabilities whose economic and employment prospects have worsened. Accenture's COVID-19 impact survey, which included almost 2,000 persons with disabilities across 7 countries, found that the proportion of employees with disabilities confident in their job or income security fell from 73% to 40% in just 6 months in 2020. Next slide. So persons with disabilities, right, less likely to be in paid employment than their peers. But what about those of us who do make it into employment? Well, the harsh reality is that we're less likely to thrive than our peers when we get there. What we found from our survey is that employees with disabilities are in fact 27% less likely to feel included in the workplace compared with the average. And by included, we mean a key component of their team, right, with real influence over decisions. And they're 60% more likely to feel excluded. And by excluded, we mean ignored or with no voice in the team. So again, bottom line here, employees with disabilities less likely to feel included, more likely to feel excluded. Next slide. Now you may be wondering why. Why do employees with disabilities feel excluded or undervalued? Well, one issue that we uncovered was this lack of transparency and trust in the workplace. A sense that employees don't feel safe opening up about disabilities they may have. From employee interviews we conducted around the globe, we found that there are fears around things like retaliation, slower progression, less meaningful roles. In the past week alone, I've had conversations with 2 individuals, one internal, one external, to Accenture, who came to me about their diagnosis with similar, right, autoimmune or chronic conditions. And in both cases, they were advised, one by their financial advisor, one by a close friend, not to disclose because they'll lose their jobs. So this survey unearthed some of the challenges or barriers, right, that are surfacing. For example, 77% of employees with disabilities say it's important to have the freedom to be the same person at work as at home. But just 24% are fully open with colleagues about the disability. So there's a clash there. If you want to be the same person at work, then surely you should be able to bring your whole self to work and tell others, share with others about who you are as an individual, even about your disability. And 71% say that having senior role models are important for them to thrive. But only 20% of executives are fully transparent about their disabilities. So executives are even less likely to talk about, to be open about their disabilities. Dare I say it, denying employees role models that will allow them to thrive and feel confident in the workplace. Incidentally, if you'd like to read more about the topic of disclosure and the culture factors that enable increased disclosure in the workplace, there is a recent HBR article which I authored. It shares my journey with disclosure and what organizations, again, can do to create that safe culture of confident self-disclosure. It's titled Make It Safe for Employees to Disclose Their Disabilities. Next slide. And that point about feeling safe, right? Psychological safety is a phrase we hear often in this space. It's brought out strongly in this chart. In fact, across a range of indicators, we see leaders overestimating how safe employees feel raising sensitive issues. For example, 84% of executives believe their employees feel safe about being open about a physical disability. And this drops to just 65% of the employees who agree. And you see very similar patterns and disparities, right? Gaps vis-a-vis perception and reality emerging for other areas, about having mental health challenges, being open about a neurological condition. There's that big, again, perception reality gap, which leads to this lack of urgency that I mentioned earlier. Why should executives and the culture change if there's this belief that the organization is doing a good job in these areas? Next slide. Let's pivot now to the important topics, right? Prevalent topics of accessibility and accommodations. Because through the same survey, we asked executives and employees about whether they feel the workplace they operate in enables thriving of employees with disabilities in terms of having the right technology, environment, and support. 67% of executives say, yes, this is what we do. But that drops to just 41% of employees who agree. That's a significant gap, one which executives must have top of mind for when they are falling short on providing necessary adjustments and accommodations, or when the technology, platforms, tools are not compliant with accessibility guidelines, or when accessibility features are added late in the design and development process. Businesses find themselves exposed to legal, financial risk, reputational risk, and poor employee engagement. However, by providing increased access to technologies, accommodations, adjustments, right, that meet the needs of employees with disabilities, the organization can lay the foundation for inclusive work cultures that enable all employees to thrive, presenting tremendous opportunity. After all, what may be necessary for some is ultimately beneficial for all. Next slide. And perhaps even more worrisome is what we saw when asking employees with disabilities across a number of dimensions how committed they feel the employer is to helping them to advance and thrive in the workplace. Ultimately, it's just 20%, 1 in 5 of employees with disabilities who feel that their employer is fully committed to helping them thrive and succeed. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And that, next slide, that is the context for what our survey tells us about the situation in the workplace, what executives perceive, what employees actually experience. Well, we wanted to take this further, right? We wanted to unearth the lessons to be learned from those environments in which employees with disabilities are thriving. So we focused on the responses from the almost, again, like 6,000 employees with disabilities to assess levels of engagement, or what we call human potential here at Accenture. And when we talk about human potential, what we really mean in this study is around 2 things. One is the career, their satisfaction, and what they aspire to do going forward. Do you aspire to senior leadership? That sort of thing. And the second is the sense of confidence and belonging, the ability to give the best of yourself to the organization. Are you comfortable raising issues, asking questions, being open about who you are and what you want to do? Do you have the freedom to innovate, to fail, to ask questions, to challenge ideas and solutions, right? And here is a big focus on that, so psychological safety factors, these sorts of things. And we took that sense of employee potential and set that against 200 workplace culture factors, and we mapped one against the other. And the idea of this is to say, which factors or characteristics of the workplace culture have a significant and positive effect on employee potential? And what this allowed us to do is identify those factors which positively and significantly influence thriving among employees with disabilities. And once we had these in place, We were also able to identify the workplaces at the very top, right, our top 10%, where these factors were most common. And we refer to these in the study as the more equal cultures. Next slide. So we talked about the fundamental role that accessibility and accommodations plays, right, in fostering an inclusive culture. But there are 8 less obvious factors which our model shows have a positive and significant impact on the likelihood of an employee with a disability to thrive in the workplace. And remember, by thriving, we mean career aspirations and that sense of confidence and belonging. And those factors include flexible working policies, employee resource groups, fair pay, parental leave policies, having that freedom to innovate, especially in accessible, appropriate workspaces, mental well-being policies, and accessible training that's designed to advance awareness of inclusion and diversity topics, right along with supporting the continuous development and thriving of your employees with disabilities. And here, why don't I talk about 2 specific factors, because I know they're going to be drawn out and discussed more deeply as part of this event. The first is the focus on mental well-being, right? This idea of having formal mental wellness policies and programs. In fact, in organizations that have them, there is this likelihood that employees will disclose a disability. That likelihood is 38% higher than the employees of companies that don't, right? So bringing in that topic of disclosure here, I think is important. At Accenture, we have a mental health ally program through which more than 5,000 employees in 24,000 countries are volunteers trained to listen when a peer needs support, to provide a safe, non-judgmental space, and help colleagues access the resources they need. And then the second focus is this one at the top, bold role models, which, you know, I do include mentorship in that factor. I'll never forget my first connection with Chad Jardee. At the time, he was our chief compliance officer, then became our global lead for responsible business. Now he's retired and he's the current chairperson for the broader disability and organization. And it was just prior to my coming out more fully when I was in the early stage of exploring this idea of a business case for disability, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. And we were meeting via conference call, so there was no way of me knowing that Chad was an amputee due to being hit by a drunk driver. He shared this openly as we got deeper into that discussion, and I learned shortly after, Chad was also our global executive sponsor for disability inclusion initiatives, including many of the studies that I've worked on prior to his retirement, which was, again, earlier this year. So I suppose I'm among those who are, I think it's 26% more likely to be open and confident about our disabilities when we have visible role models in leadership, willing to work with others, mentor others. In fact, since I went public with my disability, a growing number of people at my company and even beyond, as I shared 2 stories, right, with you earlier, they've told me that my disclosure has helped them feel more included, more willing to ask for what they need at work to thrive, more confident in their own futures. And in fact, our study illustrates that having role models who are open about their disabilities, talking about them, inviting others to conversations, right, yields employees who are 15% more likely to have higher career aspirations than their peers in organizations where this is not the case. And to be honest, knowing now how my experience has helped others, I often wish that I had opened up sooner. Now, right, before we move on, I have to say, right, there's no sense of causality here, that putting these factors in place will absolutely lead to more employees with disabilities thriving. But what our model does show is the likelihood of these factors being present in an organization where individuals are thriving. Let's move to the next slide. I thought this would be a good time to pause, maybe talk a bit about areas where Accenture is leaning in, right? And you know, we talked about the 8 factors. They're quite general. Most of them are not obviously disability specific at face value. But again, you know, in case anyone is wondering what Accenture has been up to at Accenture, right? We know that there is an important layer over the top of these factors to maximize the likelihood of employees with disabilities thriving, feeling included, belonging in the workplace. And we talked about some of these in our past report, the Disability Inclusion Advantage, and these relate to digital accessibility and workplace accommodations. And what I list here is some of those Accenture related initiatives, like our global accommodations or global it's the accessibility center. Oh, the globe, here it is, the global adjustment request tool. This is an exciting project. We piloted it in a few geographies. It is now scaled. It is a safe space to go to request any accommodation you might need. We have a central accommodations fund. It's been quite an exciting journey pushing this and scaling this out. We have our central accessibility centers of excellence, which we actually just recently launched, the one in our New York City office. That was an exciting event where persons with disabilities, even clients, right, can interact with assistive and accessible technologies. And then finally, and we know training was in that list of factors, we launched our Abilities Unleashed leadership development program, uniquely focused on employees with disabilities and supporting them as they advance and thrive in their careers. So let us move to the next slide. The final piece is around what employees with disabilities stand to gain and what do organizations stand to gain when these 8 factors are in place. In terms of employees with disabilities, right, there are major differences to employee engagement if we compare the best workplaces, the top 10%, where those 8 factors are most common, with, let's call them the worst workplaces, the bottom 10%. And there are big increases to engagement levels, 50% higher in the most disability inclusive workplaces compared to the workplaces lower down, with similar gains in areas such as stronger career satisfaction and aspirations and a higher sense of confidence and belonging. In terms of the commercial benefits, the business case, as it were, well, we know there are a range of studies that have shown that teams are more productive and innovative where employees are engaged, and we list these in the report. And if we move to the next slide, our survey analysis takes it further, right? And it shows that companies led by executives who are focused on disability engagement, again, that top 10%, are growing sales nearly 3 times and profits 4 times faster than their peers. Next slide. So here's where I provide my contact information, a link to the page which contains this study, the Enabling Change study, as well as the business case, the Disability Inclusion Advantage study. Lots more interesting and helpful studies and resources. I want to thank you so much for having me. And Beth, why don't we move into the Q&A session?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Laurie. What great information. And I'm going to ask Chauncey to join us as well as we open it up for live Q&A. It's hard to believe it's been, 2019, I guess our last face-to-face conference. You were one of our keynotes then, and the work continues. The research that you contribute and your company, your organization contributes to this work is incredible. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. I do. I mean, I've got a lot of questions, but I'm gonna hold and give others an opportunity. You and I can talk a lot, but are there questions at this point?
Beth, this is Pat. There was a question posted around the inclusion of employees without disabilities in these surveys, and Laurie did answer it, but I want to call it out just in case somebody missed seeing it in the Q&A.
Great. Wonderful.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, I did see another question surface, but now it's, oh wait, maybe it's in chat. Let me see. Great presentation. This is from Evan Tertz. Hi, Evan. Great presentation. I think your 8 sections, your 8 factors are awesome. How do you address executives who may be resistant to doing more? I love the business case ideas, etc. Thank you, Evan. You know, I think we can all agree, and these are probably the conversations that you're having with your executives, right? That creating this diverse and inclusive workplace, doing this is the right thing to do. And we know that there are several studies. We're probably using them, right? Reports and stories and on what a culture of inclusion can bring to organizations, large and small, you know, including things like increased innovation, productivity, empathy, enhanced employee and customer experience. But, you know, here's the thing, right? Going back to the 2019 event, Beth, right? I believe we were talking about the 2018 study, which was titled Disability Inclusion Advantage. In that study, which was actually a collaboration alongside Disability In and AAPD, we found that those organizations who were more advanced in their employing, engaging, enabling, and empowering, right? We call those the 4 E's. Those who are more engaged around these 4 E's for their employees with disabilities, candidates, et cetera, with disabilities, we're seeing 28% higher net revenue, 2 times higher net income, and 30% higher economic profit margin than their peers. So show them the business case, right? Tell those stories. There's a business case right there. And in terms of continuing to inspire change and commitment, you know, remember it's a journey. No one size fits all. But what we've experienced, what I've experienced is that you need to bring your people along this journey with you. So engage your ERGs, BRGs, whatever you're calling them. I've heard CRGs, right? Your employees with disabilities, even, yes, you know, external organizations like Disability In and partners into the planning for those conversations, the ideas that you can bring to the table, influencing decisions that, you know, ultimately we want to be made here. Be prepared to make bold decisions, make bold statements, and engage your leadership in those decisions. And again, you know, where you're having difficulty, I would say, you know, as I've done so many times myself, reach out to other organizations, nonprofits, your peers, for discussion, to hear those lessons learned, and examples, you know, and the guidance you might need. I hope that addresses your question, Evan.
Great. And Laurie, I would so echo that in terms of just what we have even heard, and even the leaders on this phone today, the lessons we've learned even in the last 2 years for companies that have been already on this journey. Do they get it right every time? You'll hear them say, absolutely not. But they were so, if anybody was well positioned, and that's probably not the right term, right? As we experienced what we've experienced corporately, those that had accommodations in place, those that had conversations started around mental well-being, right, which we'll hear about a little later, they were positioned to make this transition, even to a virtual workplace in an incredibly agile, I guess is the word that I would use,
Yes. Yes.
agile way. So thank you for that. Other questions from
Hey,
attendants?
Laurie, this is Chauncey. I loved hearing you speak about the business case, right? I think, personally, I spend a good deal of time within my organization helping leaders understand the business case, right? Morally, it's the right thing to do, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the bottom line. And so I always like to hear different perspectives on what that business case may look like. Would you, from your perspective, so in the research, like enabling change, had it been published earlier, how do you think it might have impacted your personal life and career development as a person with a disability?
Oh,
Do you think it would have allowed you to choose your disability or disclose it a little sooner?
oh my goodness. You're going to make me tell my story, aren't you, Chauncey? Um, so again, right, just like disability inclusion in the workplace, um, having these conversations with your leadership, making change happen, just like that's a journey, so is disclosing a disability, right? Disclosing is very open. It's public. It's not like self-identity, right? Self-identification and that sort of thing. That's more anonymous, right? But when you choose to disclose a disability, it is a very personal decision. And we know that what this study does, Chauncey, right? It illustrates for both employees and organizations alike those factors, right? That influence, that positive culture of openness and engagement, safety, right? Among especially employees with disabilities. So, um, I was employed at Accenture for almost 5 years. I think I said this earlier on, right? When I was diagnosed, and I was still trying to understand what this disease even was, let alone the long-term impacts it might bring. And so for a long time, almost 10 years, in fact, it was just my immediate family and my immediate supervisors were aware. On the family side, I come from, I guess you could say stigma was born in there, right? We don't want to worry family. We don't, we don't want to worry grandma and grandpa. And, so when I experienced another flare up in 2014 at a time of extreme personal and professional stress, I had to take a lengthy amount of time off. And it was that experience that led me to expand what I called my trusted tribe. And this included members of my team at work, my HR lead, even more family and friends who had not known prior to that. And I think this process of sharing allowed me to build, my own sort of personal confidence. But here's the thing, and this goes back to your question, it also coincided with Accenture's increasing focus and efforts to help their employees build a sense of confidence and belonging and inclusion, regardless of disability, race, gender. And this was coming through that earlier Getting to Equal research I discussed earlier on. I was hearing more about our Persons with Disabilities Champions community, our disability ERG initiatives, and also hearing that steady drumbeat of being truly human and the importance of bringing your whole self to work from senior leadership in the firm. And so I started to engage more, share more, felt the anxieties lessen while confidence and sense of belonging grew. So I guess you could say that while Accenture was on this journey of inclusion, so was I. And it was a steadily empowering experience, Chauncey, to when I finally chose to disclose in the fall of 2006, fall of 2017. I guess you can say by coming out, when I was fully out, I was fully in at that point, right? Then just the research and continuing to be devoted and committed to this space was just exponentially amplified then.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very much, Laurie.
Thank you for the question.
Well, we're grateful because we are benefiting now from that whole process. So thank you for thank you for your personal journey and how it's continuing to impact the work that we're doing every day. So
Thank
we
you, Beth.
appreciate it so much. I think, Pat, do we have time for one more question?
If it's brief,
Okay,
there's 1 minute left on your schedule.
great. Well, let me just ask, I mean, in terms of, the work that you're doing at Accenture around leadership awareness, what are some key takeaways for us today, as companies continue their journey in engaging not just leadership, right, but the overall employee workforce?
Yeah, so great question. It is obviously top of mind, right? Is, if you are going to take this journey and take this journey successfully, you absolutely need to have bold leadership willing to make those commitments, right? And so you can't underestimate the role that leadership plays. Our own CEO, Julie Sweet, has said openly several times, right, in very public forums, WEF, even Disability In's annual conference this year, that disability inclusion is very personal for her. She has shared this, again, many times. She talks about our own goals here at Accenture, our action plan, how we're measuring our progress. But she also acknowledges that we have so much more to do. We all do. You may hear the phrase best practices. I actually don't use that phrase in this space. I think that we have a lot of lessons learned that we can acknowledge and draw from. One key action we took this past year, and it was establishing a global disability inclusion advisory or leadership council, including this multi-stakeholder group from across areas such as I&D, recruiting, talent and learning, marketing, research, et cetera. And of course, digital accessibility and technology. And so, this is one example, right, of convening a group like that where you can meet on a regular basis and provide updates to each other, talk about priorities, talk about challenges, and discuss and action feedback from our people.
Great. Well, Laurie, again, thank you so much for your time. And at this point, we're gonna close out the live Q&A, and welcome Justin Francis, who will introduce our next panel. But thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your time and great work.
Thank you,
Laurie.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, great session, Laurie, and keep things moving here, and we'll jump right into the next panel. But a great follow-up session called Mental Well-Being Policies and Programs, and we have a panel that will be moderated by Dana Adderhold from SAS. She'll be joined by Tess Falkenberg from BAE Systems, Tara Ashcroft from Trane Technologies, and a former colleague of mine, Sarah White from Equitable. So from here, we'll kick it off the panel and followed by live Q&A.
Thank you so much for having us today as part of this panel. I am Dana Adderhold. I manage work life and EAP programs for SAS, and I'm very excited to share some information with you all today about what SAS is doing for employee well-being programs, and also to learn from my fellow panelists about what they do within their companies and also what their companies are doing. Hopefully we can all take some notes and take them back with us when we go back to work tomorrow. So to begin, like for all four panelists to introduce themselves, starting with me, I'm Dana Adderhold. Like I said, I work for SAS Work Life and EAP programs. And what that means at SAS is I lead a team of 4 social workers, and our job is to work with employees and their family members, really anything that's going on in their personal life that they need support and resources. We offer webinars, we offer education in the form of blog posts, seminars, one-on-one consultations. We don't do on-site therapy at SAS, but we do have robust EAP programs for employees and their family members across the world. Next up, let's go to Tess Falkenberg.
Hi, thank you. I'm Tess Falkenberg. I work for BA Systems, and I am the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Lead for our Shared Services organization. But additionally, I'm the advisor to our ABLE ERG, Abilities Beyond Limits and Expectations. That is our ERG for people with disabilities and their caregivers. And I'm going to talk to you about some programs that we have instituted over the past couple of years to really help in the mental health space.
Great, thank you. Next, Tara Ashcraft.
Hi, Tara Ashcraft. I am with Trane Technologies, and I am also a diversity, inclusion, and culture leader. Part of those responsibilities are leading our employee resource groups, which is how I got involved with mental health and well-being.
Wonderful. And Sarah White.
Hi, I'm Sarah White. I'm a lead manager in compensation and benefits at Equitable, and I'm really responsible for some of the benefit plan design and communication of our benefits plans. So especially with the pandemic, we've had a lot of communications go out in the last year. So looking to share some of our things that have worked and some of the things that we've had as challenges.
Great. The next topic that everyone would like to hear about from you all is about your programs that your companies offer as far as mental well-being policies and programs. If you could each just share some highlights or programs that you want to highlight within your company, and then a role that these programs and policies have played in creating a culture of inclusion for all employees. Would anyone like to volunteer to start?
Sure, I'll go first.
Thanks, Tess.
Yeah. So we started a program, a pilot program actually about 10 months ago, which is going to turn into a full-blown program going forward, which was born out of our relationship actually with disability and at the national level. Myself and some of my team members on the ABLE ERG were out at an Inclusion Works conference in California and heard Accenture and Qualcomm talking about a mental health advocate program. So that's where the idea started, although our program is very different than theirs. We also, a few months before that in our Charlotte facility, had an employee committed suicide. And we were still really kind of reeling from that. Didn't see it coming, didn't reach for, help until he didn't show up for work one morning. So we really, this was pre-COVID, like right pre-COVID, and thought this is something that our culture could really use. And then COVID hit. So obviously it became even more, important as we were all going through so many struggles and still are. So our ERG got together and we paired up a lot with the Inclusion Works companies and, at the national disability end level. And we designed training and asked for people to volunteer to be advocates. And what that means is, they learn about how to kind of understand signs in the workplace, maybe someone, needing a little bit extra help. We're not diagnosing, we aren't, giving any type of therapy, but we're not qualified to do that. But, sometimes people forget about our EAP as much as you communicate it, when they're in, distress, they don't always know about that. And besides EAP, we gathered a lot of external resources, into other internal resources. We have a resiliency hub, we have other programs that we can point them to. So it's employees reaching out to each other for help. And we put together this training so they can recognize it in the workplace. They also are ready to have a conversation. They're willing to engage, committing to, building a culture where, people can come forward and talk. And so we piloted it because we just weren't sure, was it going to work? But it really did. Everybody embraced it. And so we trained about 36 folks so far. And again, like I said, it's now that we're convinced that it's what we need, we're going to make that a full-blown program. And there was one other thing that we did that really helped it in building that culture of inclusion is our ERG also established quarterly meetings where we invite our employees to share their stories, whether they're a person with a disability or a caregiver. And a lot has been around mental health, but there's also been other type of disabilities that they share. And they've really been heartfelt stories of each other that we've done probably 3 or 4 now. We actually have one today that we're going to be doing right after this call, to celebrate really, October is our Heritage Month in our ERG, of course, right? And so anyhow, it just really helps build that culture of inclusion. And one thing I wanted to really say about that, the way it could help is we had an employee that, a very junior employee, share their story, and a senior executive had the same type of illness and was afraid to disclose. They reached out to this very junior employee, and now they have like a reverse mentoring relationship going on, and the junior employee is preparing the senior employee on how to, really make it known in the workplace and really build that culture of, it's okay to speak up here. So both of the programs have been amazing, so I'm really proud of our ERG and all they're doing on their own, right?
Yeah, Tess, I would say it really made a big impact hearing not just from the HR people about EAP, but hearing from colleagues. So we had heard from quite a few individuals in our different ERGs that have had personal experiences with using the EAP. So I think that helps with that inclusivity of making things seem normal or more acceptable, at least in the workplace. But then I think it really made a big impact to have one of our senior leaders talk personally about his situation with mental health during our Mental Health Awareness Month. So I think that really made a big impact because it's not just coming from the colleague level, it's actually coming from a senior leader that you see being successful in the organization and also struggling.
Absolutely. Anything that you can do to normalize an experience for someone and have them feel comfortable to share it, even in a way to help others or just to advocate for themselves and what they need. That's wonderful. That's inspirational. Thank you.
We agree that having conversations about difficult topics is the way to help bring our authentic and best selves to work. So we've been running a program called Bridging Connections, and they are open forums. We have really no control over what people share, what people ask. The topics vary from systemic racism to gender in the workplace to our Pride organization talking about coming out and what that means to them. And we found that in these conversations, the theme of mental health and the impact to well-being continues to come up in our employee stories. And we expanded that Bridging Connections set of conversations to include specifically mental health and sharing any type of stories around disabilities, depression, anxiety. And we really didn't know what would happen. We held this particular session pretty recently, and we had the most authentic storytelling that I could ever hope for in a corporate environment. And people were sharing stories about suicide ideation. They were talking about living and caring for people with bipolar disorders, sharing their own stories around managing anxiety and depression and what that looks like, especially during a pandemic and doing your best to manage your life and your work. And it was eye-opening and inspiring, and we'll continue to run that program, Bridging Connections, and continue to pull on that thread of impact to well-being and specifically mental health.
That's wonderful. We've seen the same in our employee inclusion groups at SAS. Many have chosen to address the topic of mental health in their monthly or weekly meetings and have partnered with my team to talk about mental health. And most recently, there was an EIG at SAS, and my team helped coordinate bringing together a panel of local therapists who could talk about, here's what to expect if you want to go to therapy, here's how to access therapy, here's what it really looks like, just to kind of take that stigma away from the idea that people might have of what it means to seek help for mental health. So I love hearing that other companies are doing this and it's as successful as it is.
One other thing that we're doing too is trying to highlight the digital aspect of mental health and EAP. So there's a couple of different apps that are out there now that's text to clinician or different wellness apps. And our company actually purchased a 1-year membership to one of the wellness apps for the year to try to help highlight mental health. I will say that was one that was not utilized as much as some of our other programs that we've seen, but it was a big step forward and the first time that we kind of really rallied around mental health from a full corporate initiative and making that our gift to employees for the year. So we're hoping to do more in that digital space, or to show, you don't need to have a full hour dedicated to reach out to somebody for help. You can really just quickly text someone, see if there's some answers that are out there, maybe do a quick meditation through your app, and that can really make a big difference.
I love that. I think that's so important. I think that's one of the first ways that we had to pivot when everyone came home, and we had to say, does our healthcare coverage cover teletherapy? If not, we need to add that to our policy. Does our EAP cover teletherapy, and do employees know when they call? And educating employees on what that looks like. That's something that I don't think is going to go away. I think that employees are going to continue to use that. And also, we found in referring people out to get mental health counseling, counselors were overwhelmed. They're not able to work. They're not able to go into the office. And we were having a shortage of providers, especially in psychiatry, med management, those sorts of things, or even just getting someone in with a therapist. And so if you could expand that network of providers to include a global network through teletherapy, that's made a big difference in being able to get people to mental health resources when they need them.
Yeah, we expanded our use of digital as well. And also we got more inclusive with our global health challenge. So we've been excellent in the past decade, I would say, of advocating for physical well-being. We're tracking our steps, we're competing with one another. And that wasn't all that inclusive. I mean, some people, that's very difficult to engage in a challenge with only physical activity. So that was a learning for us and an opportunity for us to be more inclusive. Well, this year, we expanded the offerings for how you could earn points and engage to watch videos about financial well-being, meditation, different ways to manage stress. And so we had all of this content in the app. And the number one type of content that was used was about mental health. So that was a huge signal to us that this is important. Our people are hungry, they're going to use it. And so what else can we do moving forward to feed them in that way?
That's wonderful. And it reminds me of the program that I wanted to talk about today, about a new initiative that SAS is doing. And I feel like SAS has been a leader in this field for a long time. You know, we're always on the Great Place to Work list, but there's always room to do more. And the pandemic is a great example of how we realized that we needed to come together. And because it's the first time, and I know all of you experienced this, there's every employee is in crisis at the same time globally, and that's never happened. And so what are we going to do to make sure these employees are supported? And so what we did is we put together a global cross-functional team, and it's HR, it's folks from our healthcare center, our recreation fitness center. We're working together with employee inclusion groups, the branding, communications, and we brought this committee together, and we call ourselves Employee Wellbeing. And our job is to kind of look at a holistic look of employee well-being. What does that look like? Not just your physical health, like you said, Tara, but also what else do we need to be doing to support you as employees? And so we came up with 6 pillars of employee well-being, and those are physical, emotional, financial, social, which is where we partner with our EIGs, and because we've realized during the pandemic, that's such an important part of a person's well-being, career, and community. And so what we're doing over the next year is building those out. What does SAS do to support the whole person in those 6 dimensions of their well-being, and making sure that we're communicating that to employees in a way that they receive it, it's accessible, easy for them to find, and it's not overwhelming, because everyone's overwhelmed. And we all know that burnout was bad before. It's going to get worse. And so how can we take all these things that we're doing and deliver them to employees in a way that they find them and then engage with them?
Is it being created as a portal then for employees to go in to be able to find the different
It
topics?
is through our our intranet is called Inside SAS. So there will be a portal, an online portal, but there will also be communications, targeted communications, newsletters, SAS Wide Web articles, Inside SAS articles used to be called the SAS Wide Web. And also, we really want to communicate with managers and manager communications, because managers all of a sudden over the past 2 years have had to take on the role of supporting their work teams' mental and emotional well-being. And that's not something that everyone is comfortable with. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting our managers and enabling them to be able to support their employees as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think that there needs to be a lot more communication and development with our management team, because they're usually on the front line. So they'll notice something changing in an employee's behavior or something that might trigger the event. And so if they can notice those warning signs early on and be able to pass on the resources, I think that'll make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we probably need to do more communications as well around that, as you said, to the frontline managers and people outside of our ERG. But we did, not our ERG, but our company did stand up a resiliency hub. I mentioned that earlier, but it sounds a lot, Dana, like what you have said. And it has a lot of resources. It cuts across both, financial and as what you said. So it's great. It is I guess a best practice, right? But so COVID, I guess, supported us in some good ways. They gave us more resources than we had before. We had to be creative, right?
Absolutely. And it took everything virtual. I know for my group, we did a lot of lunch and learn seminars on a variety of topics, but we did a lot of them in person. And so we're excluding people that can't be there during the lunch hour, or people that work in another country. So now that we are kind of virtual first in everything we're doing, we're actually helping more employees because of COVID, because of everything being virtual. So that has been a positive.
Have you had a high utilization of your portal?
I can't answer that exactly because I'm not, down in that part of the business, but I think so. We, really promoted it well, and it's in a lot of different ways you can access it, and it keeps getting built out. So, and actually our ERGs, since I'm here mostly representing them, that is a way though we've gotten them out through a lot. A lot of our discussions will pair with benefits, and they'll come and they'll talk about, the resiliency hub, and we have done the mailers and all that stuff too, but I hope so.
Yeah, we definitely saw more success with partnering with the ERGs and coming to their monthly meetings or sending out communications through them. If we were doing a meditation event or yoga, we saw a lot more participation then, because you've got people who are focused in a particular interest group. And so they're already probably more interested in attending some of these programs than the general population. But so that was one pivot that we had to do, rather than just we had a portal as well. And I don't think anybody knew it existed when it first happened, or the first 6 months. So just trying to reinforce that has really been a focal point for us.
Yeah, us too, for sure. And our employee resource groups have done an exceptional job of pulling well-being into their programming for their Heritage Month. So they're putting their own spin on it, their own needs. They're taking into consideration what their memberships are telling them. And they've been the one to really lead the way in making mental health applicable and real and meaningful in ways that I don't think our benefits team could do, because they don't work with those people every day. They don't have the relationships. And our benefits team is like, great, we'll meet you there. And so we've done a really good job, I think, of meeting our people where they are. And in that same vein, we also this year launched our ever first mental health survey of our employees. And it was very quick. It was like, hey, we need to know what's happening. And we had over 5,000 employees take this very personal, first time ever survey and share with us what their stressors were and what their comfort level with talking about mental health is, what their awareness level is. And it was very eye-opening. We had 2/3 of our employees say that they are not comfortable with their level of understanding of mental health. And so we got really great baseline data to work from. And we know that going into this next stage of planning, that some of the content that we need is very basic. It's the blocking and tackling of mental health. And so that was eye-opening, I think, for many people, but also such a great place to start from, which is let's just get all on the same page. And in doing so, we had the opportunity then to redefine mental health at Trane Technologies to be inclusive of your very best days, your very best seasons of your life, and those moments when you're in crisis and when things are not going the way that you would hope or expect. And then, of course, everything in between. And talking about mental health as a continuum where everyone can see themselves on any given day or season of their life has been really helpful in bringing everyone into the conversation. So it's not just about a disability or not just about a preconceived notion of mental health, but we all have it, and it's going to vary.
That's a really great idea. To help focus on that every day.
Do you all use kind of social tools like Yammer for employees to communicate with each other, or for your inclusion groups, or I think we use different terms, but your ERGs?
Yeah, I'd say Yammer is still pretty new for us. I think it launched sometime last year. So you do have a collection of employees that use it almost daily, and then you have some that never touch it. So it's a balancing act to try to drive. But I think we're doing a better job of trying to do campaigns around Yammer, and then our ERGs use it heavily. And then it also, there's a way for it to connect into Microsoft Teams. So then you have the chat feature in there as well.
We tried it actually early on, like a couple of years back, and it never really took off in our company.
Yeah, we've used Teams a lot more, obviously, in the last 18 months. And I have a couple of ERGs that are not on Teams yet. That's part of their go forward plan. And there's a significant difference in engagement, communication, uptick, where we have a Teams team in place. And that intact group is feeding that team with their own, again, spin on the content, questions about the content, the things that they're hosting within their Heritage Month that will bring the content directly to that group of people. So that's been a big change for us. We did not have anything like that. We had Yammer, but it wasn't, again, we didn't have the greatest luck with it at first. But, you know, when you don't really have a lot of options, you figure out how to make what is available work, and that's been helpful.
I'd say in addition to Yammer and Teams, we've started to do really quick videos to try to communicate as well. So it's not just a news feed or an email that they're reading. There's actually a quick video that can go along with it. You just have to be careful with the timing.
That's a great idea, because I think we all are just inundated with email. And so anything that's different than just reading can definitely get your attention. So any other programs anyone wants to talk about, either that you've tried or that are on the horizon?
Based on that survey that I mentioned, we are going to do more education. Like I said, we have that gap, but it will be also more about the basics of mental health, what it is, what it isn't, but also to Sarah's point, I think you were talking about being able to identify when someone isn't themselves, or the self that you know. And so we're going to focus on being able to manage our own mental health and also support those around us with the lenses of individual contributor, peer-to-peer, and then also people leader. So those will be some tracks for training and education that we focus on in the future. We've tested some things in the past through our visibility employee resource group, who is focused on people and families who have disabilities, and they have had excellent uptick and engagement in those offerings. So we'll be learning from them and using what they have already worked with a little bit. But we're really excited about bringing this content to our teams. We also had some tragedies this year as well related to mental health, and there is a fire within our entire organization, from the very top of the house to get the people what they need and be people first. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I have to say our senior leaders obviously are, we have our corporate DI council and all that, and they're very engaged in general, but well-being and employees' well-being has really risen to the top. And there's a ton of interest and engagement from our senior leaders and our ERG and all of our programs that, are there to, support employees and, wellness. So I agree. It makes a big, big difference when they hear, kind of holistically across the company from very senior leaders, and then the people that sit right next to them every day or you chat on a call with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just echo the same with trying to provide additional resources and training to managers. That's something that's top of mind, especially as we're heading into year-end performance cycle. So I know that our teams are working to create something that'll help address the mental wellness piece of it as well. And then continuing to partner with our ERGs to host different events. So we had, Mental Health Awareness Month. Looking forward to what we can do for this fall and heading into the holiday season to provide support around mental wellness. We've done a couple of webinars, but I think it really is more impactful when it is more of that community-based conversation. So I know we've done a diversity speaking series so that we've had different speakers come in and talk about their challenges with diversity, how to educate our staff, and then you can tie that into mental wellness as well. So if anyone wants to continue the conversations or speak personally, then you have that connection directly into EAP.
Great. Well, I've enjoyed meeting all of you today and talking about what's going on in your companies and what you all are doing. I look forward to the Q&A that follows this video, and so we can keep the conversation going.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'd like to invite my fellow panelists now to join me on video, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or further discuss anything that you heard on the video.
Great, Dana. Thank you so much. This is Beth, and I am just honored and so thrilled. This panel is so rich, and am very encouraged by what I'm hearing. To think that we are talking about surveying employees right around their mental wellness, that is tremendously innovative and necessary, right? So I'm so encouraged by that as an attorney, and I can say this often in this space and disability space, we have some of the toughest conversations with internal counsel because of the risk associated with that. So I'm thrilled to hear that the surveys are happening, because that is working towards minimizing and eliminating that stigma associated with these conversations. So thank you all for being here. I wanted to ask in terms of the social wellness, right, and some of those areas that you talk about. What are some ways that you all have used to increase that social connectedness during these times with your employees?
I can start. One thing that we've done that has been successful is creating discussion groups or support groups for parents of young children, for new parents, because they've really struggled during the pandemic. So just having a Teams meeting where people with that shared experience can come together and say, this is working for me, this is not, this is what's hard, and then get some, we do have a parenting person on staff, so they could get some support, but also some advice, because that whole balance and juggle has been difficult for them. So that's just one example. We've also done it for caregivers.
Our employee resource groups have done really fun things with some of their Heritage Month planning and outside of their months as well. They've done line dancing, and we did some like family reunion style party with a DJ, sharing pictures of families or traditions within families. We did a cooking show where we brought in a chef, and so there was a lot of discussion about food and culture. So the ERGs have done a really fantastic job of weaving into their programming. All of this was virtual, things that they would have done face to face, but keeping that connection and that community alive. They got really creative.
Very cool. Very
And we
cool.
kind of echo that too. I would say the ERGs have, I think, seen an increase in their participation for their events that they've hosted this year. And then we've also had some like fun entertainment events as well. Just trying to show that you can still have fun within the workday. And for the Yammer campaign, one of them that we did that was successful was Rest and Recharge. So we started with executives taking pictures of themselves on vacation or relaxing around the house to try to promote the use of PTO. And so that really took off. I don't remember how many entries we had, but it was well over a few hundred. That's good to see.
That's great.
Yeah, ours is probably the same thing around our ERGs, and our ABLE ERG has joined up with so many of our others, whether it be our Veterans Employees Network or OLA or any of our others. And just, again, same thing, trying to use as I said, we don't use Yammer, but we do have some kind of connection portal that we try to do, and we've done different events on there. And then our ERGs are national. And then we try to have site ambassadors at some local events to do some of those more local things. And so we're still participating in NAMI walks, even though they're virtual. So a lot of our site ambassadors have tried to engage their employee in that way, do some more, personal things at their site.
Great. Wonderful. And so, Pat, I know you're watching the question or the Q&A section. I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a question. I know we're running short on time here, but this is such a key topic and such an important piece of today's event, but certainly the disability inclusion journey as we move forward. So, are there any questions from the audience at this time?
Well, I have a question, and that is, can you speak? It's one thing to talk about things that help to ease the burden for the individual in the experience, meditating, relaxing, things like that. But what other policies, practical policies, like assistance for caregivers or childcare, or support for individuals that may need more leave time in order to deal with those things? What practical applications have your companies engaged in that support that issue of mental well-being?
That's a great question.
I can say a couple things. We did stand up a benefits program where if you sign up, you could get emergency child care, caregiver care, if you have to be, something you didn't anticipate. So that certainly came, out last year as COVID started, and that has been a benefit. And then I lost my train of thought for a second there. We have we changed our PTO policy where we were not allowed to go negative or take leave without pay, and we're introducing a PTO borrow program. So we're allowing folks, if they have a need, due to especially unexpected things, and if you haven't been able to build a bank of PTO because you're a newer employee, we give you some upfront, and then we also still let all employees borrow PTO as well.
We have a really, go ahead.
We also have the backup childcare and elder care resources.
Yeah, that was helpful for us too. We expanded those benefits during the pandemic. We also have a really strong EAP program with 8 free counseling sessions per issue, per employee's family member. So we've been over communicating that and trying to get as many people that type of assistance if they want it.
Yeah, and we also have paid parental leave. One thing that we noticed though with the backup care visits is because during the pandemic, no one wanted to have other people in their house or take their kids to childcare. We were actually able to have a program where you trade in your backup care visits for tutoring. So that expanded our virtual tutoring options to try to help with more situations that were dire at the time. And then we also this year launched a cultural observance day. So in addition to PTO and the holidays that we already have, we've now launched this day that employees can take for a specific holiday that maybe is not recognized by our corporate calendar. And then we also expanded some of our holiday weekends throughout the summer. So instead of just an early dismissal on the Friday before, we gave employees a half day to try to help expand that notion of taking the time to really rest and recharge during the weekends.
That's fantastic. So and this may be a stretch, but can you speak to how smaller companies might be able to apply some of these strategies so that they can enable greater mental well-being in their smaller operations?
Yeah, I think invest in a really robust EAP program that can do a lot for you as far as campaigns, work with you on what does your employee population need and how you can deliver. They can even come up with targeted promotional materials for emails. They have their own webinars, that sort of thing. So I think if you have a really robust EAP program, you could collaborate with your account manager to deliver a lot of programs for employees.
Yeah, and I would say no matter the size of the organization at this moment and moving forward, flexibility is so important. Understanding who your employees are and what they need, what they expect, and coming back to them on a consistent basis to see if those needs have changed. I think that's good advice for anybody.
And I would have executive buy-in too. So I think it's one thing for HR to push the programs, but I think it's another if you're in a town hall and the executives are talking about the programming that's available or the different resources that are available to employees.
I agree. And something that Tara said about the building connections kind of open forum, I think that's a great pair to all of this. I agree with Dana. Expansion of EAP or just really making that robust is probably the any size employer can do. And I think that's great advice. And then pairing it up with some of these other programs where you're really listening and getting real life feedback and engagement from your employees will really give you a sense of what your organization needs, because we're all different, right? Whether we're small, medium sized, large, our employee sets are different and their voices are the most important, I think, in really building out the programs that would work for you.
Absolutely. And this is, Beth, one of the things that I'm sure all of you have experienced is probably an increased utilization rate of your EAPs. But I think the other thing that I will kind of close with as we transition to our next session is the importance of diversity among the provider networks, right? I think we're seeing a lot of companies take a look at the diversity within their providers, because we know that in order for folks to feel comfortable, right, there are distinct differences. And so making sure that that diversity is reflected, right, in the provider networks that we all have as well. So with that, I just want to thank you all so much. I could talk this could be just a full conference in and of itself for sure. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, as we make the transition to our next topic, I want to welcome Pat Sturdivant, a friend, a colleague, as we move into our next session, talking about the North Carolina Employment Collaborative Initiative. This is an initiative that was funded, being funded by the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities. Pat Sturdivant is Executive Director of Capital Area Workforce Development. and has just a robust background in public administration, where she's served currently serves Wake and Johnston counties, but has also served the Durham County area in the past as well. Has spent over 14 years in public administration, and just does some incredibly innovative work, all to help employers in the community find talent, but also providing valuable training to citizens that are looking for increasing their employment opportunities as well. Pat has also served as president of the North Carolina Association of Workforce Development Executive Directors Council. That is a mouthful, and I'm not even going to try to do the acronym on that. But Pat, we are so grateful to have you with us, and thank you for your continued support of the North Carolina Employment Collaborative. And I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about the work that we've done together.
Thank you so much, Beth. I'm really honored to be part of this conversation. As Beth said, I'm part of the Capital Area Workforce Development Board, and one of 23 workforce boards in North Carolina. And the primary role of workforce development boards is to oversee our NC Works Career Centers. And as Beth mentioned, we serve both job seekers and businesses. Our goal with job seekers is to make sure they have access to employment, make sure they have access to training and education and other resources so that they're competitive for the open positions in our region. And as she said, we also serve business customers. And again, our goal is to make sure businesses have access to a qualified pool of talent to meet their hiring needs. As workforce boards, we take a comprehensive approach to workforce development. So what that means is we have employer engagement, we have community connectors, we have career advancement, we partner with human service organizations, and we support industry-driven education and training. Because our goal is to meet all customers where they are. That's business customers as well as job seeker customers. So when we think about North Carolinians with disabilities, we want them to know that everybody in our center is an individual. So when we're working with individuals to develop their employment plan, we not only talk about their career goals, we also talk about what some of the barriers might be that would hinder them from being successful in their employment journey. We talk to businesses. When we talk to businesses, we try to understand what their talent needs are and put support plans in place, provide hiring events and many other activities to support, because our end goal is to support economic development and support our job seekers and employers so that they can contribute to the economic excellence of our community. And keep in mind that every county in North Carolina has access to a workforce board and access to an NC Works Career Center. And I also like to remind people that you can access those services either face-to-face in our NC Works Career Centers, or you can access those services virtually. So important for today's conversation, I'm really honored. Beth, I think we've been working together now, has it been 2 years with the Employment Collaborative? But it's really a dedicated team of professionals that are focused on supporting individuals with disabilities being able to connect with employment. So when we think about the purpose of the Employment Collaborative, it really is to increase employment opportunities for North Carolinians with disabilities through creating a disability inclusive culture in our NC Works Career Centers. So what we're getting ready to see in this video is really talking about how that can happen and how individuals can connect with NC Works Career Centers. Because we really do want individuals with disabilities to know that they can fully utilize their NC Works Career Centers to find employment and other support services in their community. And with that, I think we're going to cue up the video.
Hello, I'm Beth Butler, Executive Director of Disability in North Carolina. Disability in North Carolina is a private, nonprofit, membership organization, empowering businesses across North Carolina to achieve disability, inclusion, and equality. This message was sponsored by the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Welcome to Your NC Career Center. And the key word that I just said is Your Career Center. Well, Workforce Centers, we're here to support people on their journey to a successful career. So some of the ways that we do that, we provide training scholarships, we provide career exploration, we provide help with resumes, work experience, and just whatever it takes to get a person from where they are to reaching their career goal. One of the first things we try to do when a person comes through the center is understand what those barriers are and help them to remove barriers.
North Carolina is an employment-first state, and roughly 2 years ago, Governor Cooper signed an executive order to that effect that recognizes the importance of people with disabilities to be part of the regular workforce, earning competitive wages, having every opportunity for a career. And our state right now is focused on the state as a model employer, meaning North Carolina as a state governing entity as one of the largest hiring entities in the state is interested to be really proactive and intentional in diversifying the workforce. We want to see people with disabilities have more opportunities to gain competitive employment, to have careers, to be more independent as a result of this, to have assets, all that comes with being employed. I really encourage you to ask and to seek out those resources. We're here to help.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Thomas. I'm with the Division of Workforce Solutions. In particular, we enjoy helping North Carolinians find jobs. That certainly includes North Carolinians with disabilities. Only about 33% of working-age Americans with disabilities participate in the workforce.
Employment impacts everybody. And NC Works Career Centers are a great resource for everybody in the community. Our initiative, North Carolina Employment Collaborative, works on just that. So we are hoping through systems change activities that there will be more partnership between agencies that work on employment services. We're talking about commerce, vocational rotation, community college, as well as our business leaders in the community. And therefore, in the end, people with IDT are going to benefit from that partnership. As a person that has a physical disability, I am well aware of the stigma, the challenges, the fear at times that you're not going to find what you're looking for, or maybe it's not going to be a good fit for you. But the biggest thing that I want to encourage people is to recognize your challenge as a strength and find the resources, the information that can help you find that fit, help you find that job you're looking for. See yourself as an asset to an organization out there that fits your goals, your skills, those intangible things that you in particular bring to a job. There's always somebody out there looking for what you have.
If just 1% of unemployed people with disabilities joined the U.S. labor force, the gross domestic product could get a boost of up to $25 billion.
The mission of Disability in North Carolina is to empower companies for disability inclusion. Many of our companies are ranked some of the best places to work for disability inclusion in North Carolina. Employers want to source from all types of individuals, including people with disabilities, and they also want to hire people with disabilities because it's about inclusion of all types of individuals.
We want to ensure that all individuals with disabilities in North Carolina have access to their local NC Works Career Centers. So we want to encourage all job seekers, including those with disabilities, to leverage the services and supports that are available to them through their local NC Works Career Center.
Well, there are more than 700,000 working-age people with disabilities in North Carolina. And employers are looking for exactly the kind of skills and talents that they already have.
My name is Chris Hendricks, and I happen to have a condition called cerebral palsy. I am an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I am a professional recording artist, and I also happen to be a professional benefits counselor that works with multiple companies such as Aflac, Colonial, and others. For persons that might be looking to have a career, who have conditions that might be visible, I would encourage them to remember that, like you, I have a condition that allows me to uniquely serve other people. Persons with conditions are just so capable. The word disability implies that we're lacking in something. And I don't remember a time in my life where I ever saw myself as missing anything or lacking anything. If anything, my condition has always made me more capable.
I am a person who lives with a disability and the limits it provides on a daily basis. Limits don't mean unable. They simply mean I have to try a little harder. I was born with a disability and in spite of that was able to run a small business for 16 years, and now I work for a large company and earn a great salary. Previously in life, I tried to hide the disability that I had. I was afraid to tell anyone and had some negative experiences when I did disclose to other people what my condition was. However, I've learned over time that the best thing I can do is to be upfront with people and to tell them in a brief way that I have a condition, I might need an accommodation, and if that comes up, I'll let you know. My advice to an employer would be to seek out candidates with a disability because they have already overcome so many obstacles in life, simply to be here, that they're going to be an incredibly hard worker, irrespective of anything else.
Hi, my name is Philip Woodward. I am a system change manager at the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, also known as NCCDD. I am hard of hearing. I read lips. I wear 2 hearing aids, and I know American Sign Language. So anyway, there are many benefits to hiring deaf and hard of hearing people. 10 to 20% of the population has a hearing loss of some type. And so if you understand your deaf and hard of hearing employees, you're going to be in a position to provide better customer service for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, who are customers. Providing accommodation for your deaf and hard of hearing employees will help all of your employees.
My name is Jennifer Gray. I'm an attorney in Raleigh, and I am legally blind. I had been practicing law for over 13 years when I unexpectedly lost most of my vision due to a very rare eye condition. That was a very difficult adjustment period for me, but there are a lot of services available that have helped me gain skills to cope with that. I have been taking classes at the DSB Career and Training Center. They've taught me a lot of adaptive technology, including computer programs, screen readers, things that would help me get back into the workforce, and a lot of programs that I think would be reasonable accommodations. I would recommend that you get in contact with your local vocational rehabilitation office and see what services they suggest. For me personally, that was the Division of Services for the Blind, and I've been taking classes at the Career and Training Center there. I would encourage people to just not be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot of available resources out there. It may be hard to ask at first, but it's definitely worth it. I was interrupted in the middle of my career as an attorney, but I still have the same knowledge, the same skill set. I just have to learn how to do some things a different way, but the motivation is still there.
NC Works did help me out with my employment. Fortunately, I was able to reach out to Beth Butler, who gave me a few, phone numbers to call and a few resources to look up, jobs, and I was able to apply to a few jobs, and I got a few callbacks and was able to get an interview and was able to start working. Basically, told them that I did have dwarfism, and they, the person that interviewed me pretty much stated that that shouldn't be an issue. And once I interviewed, she was very accommodating, and I literally had everything I needed within a week of employment of being there. So they were very accommodating at Secure Care. So whatever makes you comfortable, just ask for help. Just don't be afraid to ask for help, because I wish someone would have told me that before, and I'm glad I reached out for help, and it's been working out.
I would say if you need an accommodation or help getting through this process, be sure and ask, because there are resources there to help you find employment.
If you're a job seeker with a disability, I encourage you to leverage your local NC Works Career Center. There are services and supports available to you. Whether it's accommodations or other supports, I encourage you to ask your NC Career Center staff for more information. Well, again, thank you, Pat. And I'm going to invite Pat Kuehl as well to join us. There she is. As we just open up, and I know we're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to be mindful of that. But I again, this work is so important. And as Pat Sturdivant, you said, we are now in our third year actually with the Disability Employment Collaborative, and I also want to call out the music that you just heard from that video was composed and created by Menelik, what's his last name, Pat?
Kennedy.
Kennedy, yes, Menelik Kennedy, who is a brilliant individual, soon to graduate from Queens College here in Charlotte, but he has autism. And has just an incredible gift for composing music like what you just heard. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Menelik. But as we think about this work, we wanted to just open it up for any questions that folks may have. Pat Sturdivant, you laid it out beautifully. I mean, I think that this whole initiative is really centered around walking up alongside the career centers that are spread across our state to ensure that, they're confident in meeting the needs of all employees, or I'm sorry, all citizens, right? But including job seekers with disabilities in that.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
So Beth, I want to point out that this video is part of a toolkit that we are assembling, which we have plans to launch in early November. So that those of you who would like to download the video and use it, please do. Please look at the resources that'll be posted for not just career centers, but any organizations that are working with job seekers with disabilities, because what we've got to do is get the word out that the NC Works Career Centers are out there, ready, able, and willing to serve people with disabilities, and they're being vastly underutilized by this population.
It's a great
point.
point.
And Pat and Beth, I like to remind people that, even though we have 23 workforce boards, and I think it's 72 NC Works Career Centers across North Carolina, in every county, no matter what county you live in, there is a NC Works Career Center near you, and we do provide services virtually. So if you have challenges, get into the office, you can receive those services virtually.
Right. And yeah, and I would add, I mean, this work has really been a culmination of efforts. We have a North Carolina Employment Collaborative Council that has been made up of a number of partners from agencies from the Department of Commerce, from Workforce Solutions, Workforce Development, and Department of Health and Human Services, as well as businesses and other stakeholders, family members, and people with disabilities, all coming together to talk about how we can increase the utilization, right, of these career centers among our job seekers with disabilities. And so, as Pat mentioned, this toolkit will be, again, a culmination of a lot of resources that can be accessed through simply, either going to our website, and we're going to have a centralized kind of depository, if you will. Pat, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that process, but with the Department of Health and Human Services and the work that they've helped us with there.
Correct. So yes, we have been collaborating with our state agencies that are all represented on the collaborative council, and identifying documents and identifying free resources that are available but may be buried in websites all across the state or all across the nation in some cases. But we're collecting this into a repository, which we will launch in November and continue to update going forward, which will have resources for individuals, job seekers with disabilities, for NC Works Career Center staff who may want to have a conversation, say, about disclosure or about how to support an individual with accommodations, and just begin to break down some of those barriers so that people feel that they can go somewhere, get some initial resources, and become more comfortable with these conversations.
Right. Absolutely. And I think part of that conversation, and Pat Sturdivant, I know that you and I've talked about this, the role of the business service representatives as well, and their connectedness to employers that come to the career centers to find talent. And ensuring that because what we know is many of, for example, the member companies of Disability In, that we've heard from today, are often sourcing talent from their local career centers. And so ensuring that their commitment to disability inclusion doesn't stop at the door of a career center, right? They want that diverse talent to include people with disabilities.
Exactly.
So.
And Beth, with that, we should probably shift gears to the next panel so we can keep people on the timeline somewhat.
That sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pat Sturdivant, for joining us. And again, you guys look for this great information in the toolkits, and this work will continue. Thank you so much. And now we're going to turn it over to my friend and board member and vice chair of the Disability in North Carolina Board, Rob Rush, who will introduce our next panel. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning. Thanks, Beth. So our next panel is going to be on the topic of role models and mentors. And I know we're running a little short on time, so I think maybe we just go ahead and hop right into the video. I think there's a fantastic panel that I got to work with, and really excited for you all to see the insight that they each have to share. Thanks, Beth. So my name is Rob Rush. I'm a tax director with PwC and vice chair of Disability in North Carolina. And I'm incredibly excited to be here today with Kimberly Miller, Ali Ingersoll, and Consuelo Harsh to talk about the role of mentorship and role models. And this is a really important topic, I think, for a lot of us. It plays a lot into daily life as well as seeking employment. And a good mentor can be a really powerful and moving presence in our lives. And so I would like for each of our panelists maybe to go ahead and introduce themselves and give a few words about whether as mentee or mentor, how mentorship has played into their lives. And I'll turn it over to Kimberly Miller first to introduce herself.
Thank you, Rob. My name again is Kimberly Miller, and I have been very fortunate throughout my lifetime to have benefited as a mentee in multiple settings, most of all being the academic setting. I would say that teachers, professors at the, graduate level, undergraduate level, and lower grade level have all been very influential and also have played a huge role in encouraging me to expand and reach new achievements. And as a mentor, that has been something that my hope is to pay forward and to share with other individuals. I was born with my disability, and so I find that it's helpful to share experiences, knowledge gained, and just to exchange feedback with individuals throughout different walks of life. So that's my approach. I've been an adjunct for Gardner-Webb University at the graduate and undergraduate level for over 11 years now. I love the work that I do, and that was the role that I used to link with UNC Charlotte for the Communicability program that I experienced for the past year. So I'll give it back to you, Rob.
All right, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Kim. I'll turn it over to Ali. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and the role of mentorship in your life?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Again, my name is Ali Ingersoll. I am a C6 quadriplegic, and I was injured in a shallow water diving accident in 2010. So I have been living this wheelchair life, and my life has changed drastically, but in many odd ways for the better. In the role of a mentor, I have had some incredible mentors in my personal life, from my father and friends and family, but after I was injured, really having some strong disability leaders that I took the time to find, to reach out to, that have propelled me into an entirely new life. I work professionally as a day trader and market research analyst, but now moving into this space of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the corporate world. And I attribute that to some incredible mentors I have had who have guided me to figure out exactly where I fit in this world. As disability advocacy is a huge part of my life and my passion. And as I'm now mentoring a lot of the younger generation and newly injured quadriplegics, my driving mission I have is self-advocacy. So there are different ways to find mentors and be a mentee, but it takes your own self-initiative. And so I really pride myself on building people up and human kindness and paying it forward. And this is a community that's, kind of small, the disability community. And in order to drive change and systematic change, we have to be there for one another. And I've had such incredible success at meeting individuals who make themselves accessible and help in any capacity possible.
Thanks, Ali. That's really some really great insight. Consuela, would you like to maybe introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the role of mentorship in your life?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Yes, my name is Consuela. I am currently a student at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And yes, I'm new to the disability community. I think I became disabled in 2013, first with lupus, and then in 2014, I went to acute respiratory failure. And then 2019, I had to undergo a lung transplant. So mentorship has been very important to me since my early 20s. Not really having someone to mentor me, so I've always wanted someone. I've had the will to succeed, but just didn't know how to be successful. And I think mentors in my life who have experienced great jobs or have been through challenging situations and were able to overcome them or persevere. Those type of mentors are really helpful to me. And most recently, I've had a mentor through Answer Scholarship. They give scholarships to women who have school-age children and are pursuing school full-time. So my current mentor helps me with my resume, interviewing skills. She helps me find different types of internships and, encourages me. And I also feel that mentors help mentees with their confidence level. They help with empowering, and they also see things in their mentees that the mentees don't see in themselves. So I think that's really good because sometimes, you can have imposter syndrome and feel like you're not good enough for a particular position or you're not good enough for something. And mentors can be encouraging and I feel like I'm, here today. I work a full-time job. I'm in mortgage right now until I finish my degree at UNCC. But I think that mentorship is very important. And I think, going through your school resources or talking through your network of friends, you probably could find a great mentor. And that's all I have for now. Sorry, I was a little long-winded, but thank you.
No, that's okay. There's no harm in being long-winded when it comes to this conversation. And so I think next question I'd like to ask is maybe how have you gone about finding a mentor, helping others to find a mentor? Is because I think that is often a big challenge in this space, is because it's very difficult to just kind of be thrown to the wild and be like, well, I need somebody to help me with this, or I need to get some perspective on whether it's employment, whether it's life, whether it's handling a newly found disability. But so I'll just kind of leave it open for whoever wants to chime in. How have you gone about finding a mentor? Again, maybe helping someone else find a mentor.
Sure, I'll take that question first. I approached it with a multi-pronged approach, actually, but it first started with me wanting to have a mentor before I started mentoring others, and specifically as it relates to the disability world. Professionally, I have a lot of skill sets, and on the nonprofit side of my disability advocacy, I sit on boards and Governor Cooper's State Independent Living Council. And I really felt that I wanted to now in the midst go through a career switch, nearly hitting 40, and really work to affect greater change on a global scale in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I sat down nearly a year ago and really thought critically, how do I do this? And so approach number one is I reached out to some great movers and shakers in the disability advocacy world. And I simply went on LinkedIn and I wrote them a private message. And then I looked through a lot of major corporations and found their directors and managers in their diversity, equity, and inclusion world. And I wrote them personal messages. And for every 100 messages I sent out, maybe 30 people would write me back. And of those 30, maybe 10 would be kind enough to give me a call. And I would build those relationships step by step. They do take work, but when you find that right person, they see something in you, they believe in you. And, as Consuela said, sometimes you don't have the confidence. I didn't know how I could use my skill set and create, and go into a cross industry. And they've given me an incredible amount of confidence. And then on a personal level, reaching out to local disability organizations for all kinds of disabilities, and to the nonprofits, reaching out to board members and the organizations, and just having conversations. How can I get involved? I think getting involved is incredibly important. Even if you volunteer in some capacity, it's an hour a week, it's 5 hours a week, whatever it may be, but those conversations lead to relationship building, right? So life is about people, life is about relationships. You never know who you're gonna meet, how you're gonna meet them, and how they're gonna affect your life. I have met people months ago, and then, a month later or 2 months later, they'll be like, oh, I was thinking about you, Allie, and what a great conversation we had. I would love to connect you to this human being. And so it's kind of like a domino effect, but you kind of have to, that expression, you throw as much as you can against the wall. Well, that's sometimes what it takes to find the right mentor.
Thanks, Allie. Any Consuelo or Kim, any thoughts that you have on finding a mentor or helping others to find a mentor?
I think just to add to what Ali so eloquently stated, networking is very important. As a therapist, one of the things that I do is when I, work with individuals with disabilities and they request information, I make it, a point to have that available to them. And also as an instructor, with regards to academics, there are so many programs that are in place that students can benefit from. But anytime that you have the opportunity to network with people who have a broad range of knowledge, and or information about connections that are potential sources for you as a mentee, and frankly, as a mentor, right? Mentors learn from each other as well. As we work with mentees in different settings, I think it's important to learn and, and continue to gain information as the field changes professionally, but also as we grow as individuals personally. And so I think that it's a very healthy thing, both as a mentor and a mentee, to continue to build and to learn and to grow together, because as life, progresses and our profession progresses and changes, as Ali alluded to as well, we all have more information to gain, as we continue to sort of understand how we fit into either our current profession or a new profession. So I think it's just beneficial to always be reciprocal with the knowledge and the learning.
Thanks, Jim. Consuelo, any thoughts that you have about finding a mentor or helping others to find a mentor?
Well, as a young student and, well, not a young student, but a new student to the school, I found that joining the disability services, that's how I was able to find out about Disability In. And, you just have to do your research. It is tough. I wish there was like a network for you to just type in, and maybe you can type in Google to see if there's a community of people with disability. But I think, starting with yourself and wanting to get a mentor and trying to find resources to be able to get a mentor. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Consuelo. And I guess on that topic of finding mentors, I know one thing that Disability in North Carolina has been doing is the Communability program, where we've been working with the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, hope to work with other schools too in the future in order to help connect some of those rising seniors and juniors to mentors so that they can have connections for employment, get insight on employment and such. And Kim, I know that's a program that you've been fairly heavily involved with in the last year or two. Any thoughts on your experience with that program? Any insight you can share there?
Sure, it was a really good experience. I was matched based on interest from the student as well as my own professional experience. And so I was matched with a senior entering the field of psychology and counseling. And she and I worked together through the agenda of the program, but we also, at her request, spent some time talking about very practical issues that are applicable to the lives of individuals. She and I did not share the same disability, but we share the same types of common challenges and or struggles, if you will. Most of our discussions surrounded just the conversation around problem solving, interviewing, how to discuss the disability with employers, potential employers or current employers. If something changes about your disability accommodation requests and things like that. As a student leaving the world of academics and entering into the world of professional work, I think there are some uncertainties that all students may feel, fears even, or anxieties, not only about just being new to a profession, but new as an individual with a disability in various professions, and finding one's comfortable place, if you will, where people can feel successful and also feel confident that they are bringing the best of themselves to the field that they have chosen. And so it was really, as I said earlier, it has been important to me personally to have benefited so much from very strong leaders in my own life, most of whom have been in the academic world, but to have had the opportunity to begin to share that with young students entering the workplace. I think it was a valuable experience. It's one that I want to continue forward, hopefully expand even into other universities as well, because I think there's an important message that we all have to share as we as individuals continue to grow. So I would recommend that anyone who has the opportunity and the desire to give of yourself to the field, to reach out and to do what you can, if it's one student or 3 students, to work with those young individuals as they become, active in the next generation of the workforce.
Rob, I'd love to add something that Kimberly said on that topic, if that's all right.
Of course.
So there's a resource too out there. Every state has them. They're called Centers for Independent Living. And I'm not sure why so many of us with disabilities don't know what they are, but Centers for Independent Living are organizations that help individuals with all types of disabilities into workforce, employment, housing, understanding Medicare, Medicaid, funded by the 1973 Rehab Act by federal dollars, by grants. And I'm the vice chair for Alliance of Disability Advocates here in Raleigh. And what's really cool about this organization is that 51% of the staff members, of which we have 19, have to have a disability, and 51% of our board have to have a disability. So we all understand disability so intricately and the need. And I am, working with a lot of our board members now, trying to spread the word, because I meet so many individuals with disabilities, specifically in the spinal cord world, since that is the realm that I live in, and they've never even heard of them. So there are resources out there like that are, to add on to what Kimberly said, that are there and at the fingertips. We just need an education and awareness campaign. But sometimes in the nonprofit world, as we all know, especially with disability, things kind of move at snail pace. And we don't have the funds or marketing campaigns to get it out there, but it's conversations like these that kind of spread awareness in that realm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ali. And I guess kind of maybe segueing off of that a little bit too. A last question I think I'd like to ask is, why do you feel that mentorship is so specifically critical in the community of individuals with disability? I think obviously mentorship's like important for everyone, but I think particularly in this community, it's a critical tool that each of us has in order to raise our ability for employment or raise our networking capability, et cetera. But curious to hear what each of your thoughts are on why, again, mentorship is so specifically important in the community of individuals with disability.
Well, I'll pop in first. I think specifically with disabilities, there is, historically this negative stigma surrounding disabilities, that we're weak and we're these fragile individuals. And so many of us are just, it's like instinctively in society, we think about that. But individuals with disability, many of us deal with the most incredible adversities in our life, are some of the strongest individuals I know. But I think that leads to a lack of confidence because we don't have these mentors or mentees to kind of pave the way. So I think it's so important to have these mentors who are strong, who have paved the way for decades in the disability world to build that confidence and understand that, we may need special accommodations and accessibility to get our jobs done, but we're just as effective and efficient as the next able-bodied person to do our jobs. And that involves changing the narrative from the top down in companies and organizations to show us. And that's only going to become through speaking up and voicing up for those of us with disabilities that we can do it. We just need a little bit of, extra, whether it's for vision or physical impairments, whatever it might be, some accommodations. So I think that's a key factor.
Thanks, Allie. Kim, any thoughts?
Sure. I agree 100% with what Allie has said, and would just add to it that for me personally, it's about taking the dis out of disability and recognizing the resilience and the value that people with, physical or emotional challenges bring to the workforce, bring to academics, bring to the lives of other people. I think that there is a need for individuals with disabilities, but also that there is a need for potential employers to recognize the value of what individuals who have traveled through the challenges of various types of disabilities in their lives and how that has made them just an incredibly strong individual, and that only can strengthen what they have to bring to the workforce. It also makes us more empathetic and dedicated, I think, in a lot of ways to performance. And I think that is a value that companies, can only benefit from themselves. If you have employees that value their job because they are stronger individuals, then I think it can only open doors if we network, together. Just to kind of segue back, I had the opportunity to attend a training for professionals a couple of years ago for Goodwill. And it was a program that I totally was not aware of, as it offers training, resources for education, resources for linking people with disabilities into the workplace. And it was all very valuable and new information to me. I passed it on already, but because they are in the community and they have a presence in the community, it's there and available as well. So those are the types of resources that, as Allie alluded to, they're there. It's just that I think we could, benefit from the increased awareness of programs like that are local, that are available for students and people who are looking for employment, or who may have to change their employment to accommodate disabilities and the needs that are associated with those.
Thanks, Kim. Consuela, any thoughts from you in terms of why mentorship is so specifically important to the disabled community?
Yeah, I think it's very important. For me, I didn't become disabled until 2013, so I didn't know what to do. My family didn't know what to do, and I feel like the disability community is very thoughtful. They embrace you, so having someone that, you might have a different disability, but at least they understand the extra work that you have to put in. You might have to work 10 times harder than a regular individual, but you still get the job done. but I just think it's very important for your confidence level for you to know that you are able to do just as much as anybody without a disability. And I feel like it's helped me tremendously. I have multiple mentors and they all help in different ways. And I'm very blessed to have them. I don't know what I would do without a mentor. So I think it's very important if we can somehow figure out to get the word out for young people or new people with disabilities. I think it's very, very important to have mentorship.
Thanks, Consuelo. I think that's a really good point you made too, is that oftentimes mentorship doesn't mean one mentor. It can often mean many mentors, whether they have different perspectives, different insights, or just from different walks of your life. I think that's a really critical point to make. But I think we're going to turn it over to live Q&A here in a minute, but I can't thank Kim, Consuelo, and Ali enough for taking the time today to join this conversation. And I hope everybody has been able to take something important away from this conversation. So with that, we'll turn it over to live Q&A. Thanks again to Kim, Ali, and Consuelo. I think everybody's joining the panel live here in just a second. I see we have one question in Q&A for Consuelo. So Consuelo, Justin Francis asks, what do you see as the biggest need for disability service organizations in higher education from your experiences? Are the school leaders giving it enough attention?
Hello, hi everyone. Can you hear me? I'm on my cell phone.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yes, I feel like the word needs to just get out a little bit more, as far as reaching out to especially new people with disabilities, because like I mentioned in the panel, I didn't become disabled until 2013. So I just did my research and, I was like, oh, the school has the disability services, let me join. And then, I ended up getting an email in regards to Disability N, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me see what happens if I join this. And I found out this was this huge, thoughtful, caring community. And I've never felt so much at home than, being with the Disability N. But if there's a way that maybe social media, or if we can get somebody that's really good with social media, because that seems like that's a big thing, getting the word out to people, finding someone who's charismatic, who can get the word out, having like a student on campus getting the word out, having someone at one of the big companies getting the word out, like the ERGs. I know the company that I work for, Better, they're coming up with a disability ERG. So just finding ways to get the word out, because it's not always that easy to figure out the services available. I know for myself, I will be going back through this panel. It looks like it's being recorded. So I can, make sure I have the services, and then also, trying to give back as well, trying to help other people that have disabilities that need that mentorship. I would love to do that as well. But yes, that's all I have for now.
Thanks, Consuelo. No, that's really helpful. And let me check Q&A. I think we might have just gotten another question. So Sean Flanagan asks, are there resources available for people outside of North Carolina? Sean, maybe more specific in terms of what resources you're looking for, but I know Disability N is a national organization. There's branches of Disability N all across the country. I know there's a lot of local resources in many places as well. Ali, I know you mentioned independent living in our panel discussion. I think that's a North Carolina specific resource though, isn't it? Are there similar resources outside of North Carolina?
No, centers for independent living are nationwide. There's about 400 of them. And so you can go on to independent living website, Center for Independent Living, and they will tell you which centers are open in your state and where they're located. There are also a ton of resources. I mean, every state has their DHHS, so you have vocational rehab and other organizations to help you as well. You just have to go on the Centers for Independent Living and then choose your state.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. So I know we're running short on time, so maybe I'll just put one more question out there. So I know when it comes to mentoring, when it comes to mentorship, I mentioned earlier I work for PwC, and we have a pretty robust mentorship program, both for individuals with and without disabilities. We have, whenever somebody gets employed by PwC, they're assigned a buddy, a coach, and a relationship leader to form a mentorship network from day one. Then we also have opportunities for individuals to elect through our employee resource groups, which we call inclusion networks, to opt in for mentorship with individuals all across the country. I was curious, what are some good examples that any of you on the panel have seen in terms of whether it was your organization or another organization that you've seen where they've set up a robust mentorship program or really done a good job investing in and connecting individuals with disabilities with the right resources?
Well, I'll jump in briefly. I mean, just going back to the Centers for Independent Living, every individual that calls in is assigned a community inclusion specialist, and that's their community inclusion specialist. So they will not just say, okay, you should reach out to vocational rehab. They will find you the right contact and the right person to reach out to. So you're kind of not just thrown to the wolves. You have a direct point of contact, which I find in any relationship, when if you have a mentor, when I have mentors, and they don't just say, you work at PwC, oh, this is a great company. They're very open to disability inclusion, and then that's it. But they find me a person, a point of contact, which I think is really, really key to build that individual relationship.
Thanks, Allie. Kim, any thoughts from you?
Sure, I would just add to that disabilities in North Carolina, but in other states as well, using the Communicability program, linking college students, more specifically graduating seniors, with mentors in the community, I found to be very interesting as a new sort of expanding program in North Carolina. But since my own experience as a mentor, I've had the opportunity to speak with other participants in the program as mentors and mentees in Georgia. And it is a really good opportunity for rural colleges, universities, as well as, more populated areas to sort of get together and connect with those students to bridge the pathway forward for information and support and mentorship opportunities as they begin to enter the workforce. It was very encouraging to see that people from large companies are willing to take the time to sit down with new, students new to the workforce, and to sort of introduce them to the practical aspects of accessing new information specific to gaining employment. I thought it was really interesting. It was beneficial to me as a mentor linked with a student who graduated last spring. I'm looking forward to continuing that program. And as I said in the panel recording, I personally have benefited from that beginning in school myself, for the opportunity to link with people academically to transition into the workforce. So it was really good to have that experience last year.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I think the Communicability program is a really powerful program that we've been building here and as part of disability in North Carolina. And I'd encourage any of you watching, if that's something you'd be interested in helping with connecting with the students or helping to grow that program, I highly encourage you to connect with Beth or Pat. We're really excited for what that program could look like in the coming years. Consuela, no pressure, but any closing thoughts before we move on to the next section of the agenda?
Yes, I was just going to say that disability and the National Disability has assisted me. I went to the Disability In conference, I think in 2008, and that was like the best experience I've had in my life, I would have to say. And then most recently, the Disability In North Carolina has assisted me with, of course, Beth. I know I was able to jump back into working last year in 2020 at Novant. And prior to that, I haven't worked in like 6 or 7 years. So that was a really scary experience for me to jump back into the workforce, but Beth was there to comfort me and encourage me, and it was just it was beautiful jumping in, and I'm also through it. I am a mentee at Answer Scholarship. They assist young women going back to school as well. But yes, that's all I have to say, and thank you for asking.
Thank you so much, Consuelo, and thank you, Kim. Thank you, Allie. And I'll turn it back over to Beth now for the next item on our agenda.
Well, thank you, Rob, and now we are going to move right into our Disability in 2020 Employer Awards. So here's the big moment. Sit back and enjoy.
As we celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month, we proudly recognize 11 Disability In North Carolina member companies. Each of these employers received top scores on the 2021 Disability Equality Awards and are among the best places to work for disability inclusion in North Carolina. The DEI is a comprehensive assessment tool jointly designed by business leaders and disability advocates. The DEI helps businesses analyze their environment, identify opportunities, and leverage disability inclusion as a competitive advantage. As a top scoring company of the DEI and a member of Disability In North Carolina, these companies have demonstrated their commitment to invest in disability inclusion not only at the national level, but at the affiliate level right here in North Carolina. Making disability inclusion a top priority in these organizations is transforming their corporate culture. Congratulations to the following 2021 Disability In North Carolina Employer Award recipients: BAE Systems, Biogen, Ernst & Young, Equitable, Lowe's Companies, Inc., MetLife, Novant Health, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Wells Fargo and Company, TIAA, Trane Technologies. Congratulations. The Steve Labor Leadership Award recognizes an individual whose leadership and vision has opened doors to the employment of people with disabilities while transforming attitudes to remove barriers to employment. The 2021 Steve Labor Leadership Award is presented to Justin Francis. Justin Francis has recently retired as CFO for the Protection Solutions segment of Equitable. He has shared his broad range of accounting, auditing, and operational finance experience and skills with Disability In North Carolina's Board of Directors for over 2 years, serving as treasurer. He is a CPA and graduate of Lemoyne College. While at Equitable, Justin also served as the co-chair of the True Abilities Employee Resource Group. Justin has also served on the Employee Resource Group Committee with Disability In. Thank you, Justin, for your tireless efforts to promote disability inclusion as an executive leader and champion for people with disabilities. You are definitely in.
Well, congratulations to our award winners, and a special shout out to Justin Francis. Again, very well deserved. For those that will be receiving awards, those are going to be shipped to you, so you can share those with your colleagues. And again, congratulations on the great work that you're doing. We also want to recognize our host company, host sponsor company award winner, and that is Trane Technologies. Trane has walked with us through the virtual environment that we have experienced over the last 2 years, and has just enabled us to put on events like the one you've seen today. I promise you my technical skills would not have allowed this to happen the way it did today. Thank you, Eric Schneider. Thank you, Greg Young. And thank you for the leadership of Evan Tertz at Trane Technologies and all of you who are so committed to disability in North Carolina and making this event something that doesn't just help you, but helps so many companies across our state. So thank you for what you've done for us. And now it is time to wrap up and close today's event. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to spend some time talking about this important issue, particularly in the month of October as we celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Some really rich content was shared. This has been recorded, so you will have an opportunity to receive this information and share it with others. As a reminder, Disability in North Carolina is a membership organization. So please, if you are not a member, if you are still kicking the tires here and considering membership, we encourage you to take a look at our website at di-nc.org and join us in this journey. Our supplier diversity event is going to be postponed. It was supposed to happen today after today's event, but in order to really increase the level of engagement of both the supplier diversity professionals and our DOBIes, our disability-owned business enterprises, we've pushed that event to November 2nd. So you will receive additional information on that. But if you have individuals that are involved in the supply chain of your organizations, I encourage them to attend this important work, because small businesses are vital to the continued economic growth and recovery of our state here in North Carolina. And so with that, I want to thank you. Thank you, Pat Kuehl, our operations director, for your continued and tireless leadership as well in what you do every day to empower businesses across North Carolina to achieve disability, inclusion, and equality. And with that, I leave the rest of the day to you, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.